अहम ये बजट, क्योंकि ना सिर्फ ये वोट का बजट होगा बल्कि ये ग्रोथ का बजट भी होगा। कोविड 2 साल से लगातार देश जूझ रहा है मीनाक्षी कोविड के साथ। कई ऐसे सेक्टर्स हैं जिनको काफी भारी मार पड़ी है। अगर हम टूरिज्म की बात कर लें, एविएशन की बात कर लें, मिडिल क्लास की बात कर लें, कई लोगों की नौकरियां भी चली गई। कई लोगों को राहुल बहुत मुश्किलें भी उन मुश्किलों का सामना करना पड़ा, भले से ही वो नौकरी पेशा लोग हो। दोज आर पीपल हु आर इन जॉब्स और दोज हु आर सेल्फ एम्प्लॉयड। इन सब लोगों को काफी मुश्किलों का सामना करना पड़ा और यही वजह है कि हर कोई अब उम्मीद से देख रहा है वित्त मंत्री की तरफ कि थोड़ी
हाँ, इनफैक्ट पंजा देखिए, अक्सर हम ये कहते हैं कि वित्त मंत्री के पिटारे से क्या निकलेगा, लेकिन आज उम्मीदें ये हैं कि 11 बजे वित्त मंत्री के टैबलेट से पूरे देश के लिए क्या निकलने वाला है। रिफॉर्म, रिवाइवल, और क्या इस आधार पर राहुल जी इकोनॉमी आगे बढ़ेगी, इस पर नजरें रहेंगी।
देखना ये भी है। And viewers, this is important. This is also, of course, happening in the backdrop, not just of pandemic, but also of polls. How much is that going to be in the focus, Navika? That's something that one will have to look at. You'll have to really read the fine print.
इस देश में polls हर साल होते हैं, so polls are a given.
But यूपी वाला नहीं होता।
उत्तर प्रदेश का पोल 5 साल में एक बार होता है। और ये उत्तर प्रदेश जो है ये बहुत अहम जगह है, क्योंकि कहा जाता है कि नई दिल्ली का जो सिंहासन है उसका जो रास्ता है वो लखनऊ से होकर गुजरता है। तो इसलिए और मैं अपने दर्शकों को I want to tell our viewers just a little insight. I spoke to the top people dealing with the budget. I'm not going to name them because this is an off-record conversation.
But one of those people who are posing with the finance minister, isn't it?
Well, who's telling you that it wasn't?
It wasn't.
The
it
one
wasn't
person.
Just, okay,
the one person in a sari. So, मैं बताना चाहूंगी कि अंदर से आवाज ये आई थी कि अगर पिछले साल का पैंडेमिक दौर का बजट बहुत मुश्किल था तो इस बार चैलेंज उससे भी बढ़कर है। और जब मैंने पूछा कि क्यों ये चैलेंज बढ़कर क्यों है, क्योंकि हमारे देश में एक्सपेक्टेशंस की दर जरूर बढ़ती रहती है, चाहे इनकम टैक्स की दर बढ़े ना बढ़े। तो इस नोट पर मैं हैंड ओवर करती हूं टाइम्स नाउ नव भारत का वोट का बजट, एंड राइट हियर ऑन टाइम्स नाउ the budget for growth, the way we are looking at it, because when India grows, everybody grows.
Absolutely, Navika, and that's very well put. And you know, the great thing, viewers, is that the economic survey, largely a feel-good document this time, you would say. There are, of course, some caveats here and there, but largely it injected a sense of hope and purpose, and it has given the finance minister some leeway to go out there and really push through, I won't say a stimulus because that's a bad word, but certainly, Navika, a certain amount of resource backing to the growth story.
It's true, yeah. Simply because if you look at what India is really looking out for, yes. and what she can actually deliver at this point in time, because as I said, in our country, if there is one thing that's skyrocketing, it's hopes. Absolutely. Expectations. They skyrocket every year, but there's one thing about being realistic on what can be delivered, because at the end of the day, we're looking at an inflation that is 5.59%. So overspending can create pressures on inflation. But let's just take a broad look on India ka dil mange more, because that really is the subtext of what we want.
Just also want to quickly introduce the team that is going to be joining us. Arvind Panagriya needs no introduction, viewers. Also with us, Santosh Mehrotra, and of course
Chetan Bhagat joins us from Singapore, and Mr. Gursharan Das knows his economy as well as his Aam Aadmi economics and corporate economics. So we have a group of experts that are going to decode this budget for our viewers this morning, and they're going to be giving us their takes, because all of them, each one of them is more eminent than the other, and each one of them are known to be very, very clued in critics
Absolutely.
as well as analysts of the budget. So very warm welcome to all of you, Dr. Arvind Pangaria, Gusharan Das, Dr. Santosh Mehrotra, and of course Chetan Bhagat. But let's first start with India ka dil mange more. And what does India want? Salaried class wants an increase in tax exemption limits. It's, I think, a permanent graphic that we should have every election because we want this every year.
Yes,
Hasn't
absolutely.
been coming in for the last 3 years.
The middle class has been ignored. I don't know why, but the middle class has been always feels that they have to take everyone else along. They get squeezed.
I've asked this question to at least 3 finance ministers and the prime minister.
You have.
And they've always come out with this कि ये मिडिल क्लास जो है ये देखती नहीं है कि सबटेक्स्ट में कितना कुछ उनको मिल रहा
Exactly.
है. अगर अच्छा एयरपोर्ट मिल रहा है तो वो भी मिडिल क्लास.
Well, the urban unemployed viewers wants a job guarantee scheme. Remember, whatever you might say, the pandemic has hit, of course, the urban sector very hard, especially in unorganized sector, especially in small scale sector viewers, where a large number of the urban unemployed are being seen. And you know, Arvind Panagria this morning sent us some figures also. So he's been up pretty much all night. Farmers, of course, they want a hike in PM Kisan allocations, Yojana allocations, corporates, more government spending to spur demand. You know, all of these are pretty much now, as you said, part and parcel of the budget furniture.
So
Everyone wants something.
Let's make a bet today,
Yes.
Rahul, because this is on the eve of polls in you know, very prominent states, UP, which is next door.
Yeah.
In fact, we are standing in UP, Noida Film City.
That's true.
And therefore, these elections are the biggest elections in a sense, and this is also the mid-year referendum, so to speak, of the second term of the Modi government. And number 3,
There's Punjab, Kisan, you know. And,
we've come out of a Kisan Andolan.
Yes.
And that's going to be weighing heavily not just on the minds of farmers, but also in terms of the poll prospects that they come. So definitely there is going to be something for Kisans. It can be a given and we can bet on it.
Now, yes, I think you're absolutely right. In fact, the fine print of the budget will really be having to look, viewers, at what goes state-wise. Punjab, UP will be up there. Navika, you've been speaking to some people and a lot of breaking news. You seem to put your money, since we're talking about the budget,
There
on
isn't
exemption.
any, it's all gone in tax.
Exemption or tax restructuring, talking about tax, restructuring for long and short-term capital gains under consideration. Let's break that, viewers. Let's break that for our viewers who are listening in. Our first budget breaking this morning. Pranesh and team, Poonam, all of you, you're going to put this out. This is a big one. Let's go straight across to our panel also. Let's bring in Arvind Panagria. Good morning, Mr. Panagria. Lovely to have you. Chetan Bhagat also there. I love the energy. Arvind Panagria, what's your expectations? You know, the basic question that we want to begin with today is whether the finance minister is really in a position of strength so she can actually impart that thrust to the economy. Does she have the resources? It's a perennial question, but I think this time, if you look at the survey, there seems to be some positivity there. Mr. Panagria, good morning.
Good morning, Rahul, and good morning, Navika. Absolutely, absolutely. I think the economic survey comes out very upbeat and based on information and numbers. That is the part of economic survey I really like, that they have gone in for actual survey.
Absolutely. Yes.
You know, and the finance ministry is very well located because the tax revenues have been doing very well. The growth rate is back to 9.2%, expected to be 8.5% according to the survey, but others actually,
Yes.
like the IMF is saying 9%, and we could possibly still hit 9% in fact, so could exceed economic survey says. So all in all, prospects for revenue growth in the coming year also very good, and so even some of the budget consolidation, fiscal consolidation can happen while maintaining the expenditures at the level that they have now reached.
Let me also get in Mr. Gursharan Das. And Mr. Das, good morning to you. I hope you've had your first cup of tea this morning. And after that tea, how's the economy looking to you, and what's the elbow room for the finance minister? Because while India wants a lot, and there is a lot of messaging that the finance minister may want to do through these elections, because this is really election time, and budget will have to have something, in terms of sending out messages to their electoral component, and they will also be looking to make out some sort of a message to corporate India, to the middle classes, to every section of the society. What kind of elbow room do you think Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has this morning?
Well, I think that the growth of 8 to 8.5% that has been forecast through the survey, economic survey yesterday, is a doable thing as long as we do the right things. And the right things, really, we don't have to look far, because last year's budget was really an excellent budget. And what we should see, actually, is how much of that budget we have achieved. And if we follow that tradition of the last year's budget, today we are better placed than we were last year to move ahead on the roadmap to recovery. And I would say that we should really, how to make this 8 and 8.5% possible is again a repeated thrust on infrastructure. And there has been progress, but not complete progress. So we should find out why, despite having this gutty committee to monitor that progress. There was an excellent, the best thing about last year's budget was it was a transparent budget. For the first time, the government actually tried to be very honest and did not hide items which were off budget. And then I think the other thing that was very good was the importance, this MSME, the way we've handled the pandemic through loans, not through giveaways, but through investment, through giving loans for employment. And so there's a lot we can talk about, but I would just say that the key thing, why is it important to have growth? Let's remind ourselves, it is because of jobs that India has been a high-performing economy over the last 20 years, high-growth economy, but it has failed to create the jobs that we want.
Jobs and jobs. Well, Gurcharan Das, hold your thoughts. We're just going to go straight out to Madhav Das. Gopalakrishnan has some breaking news coming in, more budget insights. Navika, let's go straight across to him. We also have Mohit Bhatt outside the finance minister's residence. There's obviously always going to be some action there. We're going to connect with him too.
And Elizabeth is at North Block, because that is the distance that the finance minister is going to travel first from home to North Block to pick up her bike khata. These days it's the bike khata and the iPad inside it, hopefully.
All contactless. Let's just quickly go out to Madhav. Madhav, some important breaking news with you. Let's put it out there. Pressure on hike in exemption limit now for interest and principal amount for home loans. There are other things. Just take us through some of what you know.
Well, absolutely, Rahul. In fact, this is going to be something that our viewers at home would be very interested in, particularly, of course, to open up the real estate sector. This is going to be a very, very important limit, if a very important development if it does take place, where the exemption limit that is currently at around 2 lakhs would be increased for the interest and principal amount for home loans. It could certainly spark off a lot of movement, a lot of activity in the real estate sector, and that is something that really could also be perceived as a people-friendly, a middle-class friendly, a taxpayer-friendly move, because clearly it would impact a huge number of individuals in the salaried class. So that's one expectation certainly that has been put out, and some development in that regard can be expected this time round when Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman presents her budget at around 11 today. Rahul.
Well, thanks very much for that update. Keep your eyes on all the big breaking news that we're bringing to you right here this morning on Times Now's budget broadcast, because it's important. While there might not be too many changes in the tax slabs, we're looking at capital gains to have a little bit of a leeway. We're looking at home loans exemptions to be raised, and that's going to be good news for the salaried. And let's take a look
Changes
at
in corporate tax. Yes.
Corporate tax exemption limits, or some changes in the rate of corporate tax, which is at 25%. That's also being expected. Let me go across to my colleague Mohit Bhatt, who's standing outside Nirmala Sitharaman, Finance Minister's house at Safdarjung Road. Mohit, any activity? Is she all set? Because around 9:15 is when Finance Minister normally leaves her residence to go to the North Block for that photo op with her bike khata.
Okay.
Well, before I come to you, Mohit Bhatt, let's take a look at MOS Finance and what he had to say. Pankaj Chaudhary ji, any insight into the budget? Always good to take a look at.
देश के सभी सेक्टर के लोगों को भावनाओं को ध्यान में रखते हुए एक समावेशी सर्वसमावेशी बजट आने वाला है, जिससे निश्चित तौर से देश के लोगों का कल्याण होगा और देश भी आगे बढ़ेगा। समाज के सभी वर्गों को ध्यान में रखा गया है। निश्चित तौर से थोड़ा इंतजार करिए, बजट आएगा, सब कुछ सामने आएगा। इन सभी सेक्टरों को सभी चुनौतियों को ध्यान में रख करके ये बजट आने वाला है। थोड़ा धैर्य रखें आप लोग, कुछ घंटों की बात है। देश के सभी सेक्टर के लोगों को भावनाओं को ध्यान में रखते हुए एक समावेशी सर्वसमावेशी बजट आने वाला है, जिससे निश्चित तौर से देश के लोगों का कल्याण होगा और देश भी आगे बढ़ेगा। समाज के सभी वर्गों को ध्यान में रखा गया है। निश्चित तौर से थोड़ा इंतजार करिए, बजट आएगा, सब कुछ सामने
Was the biggest hint being given now by the MOS Finance, saying that sabhi vargon ko. So it's going to be some sort of a populist
statement also to say, because normally MOSs don't know what's going on
what's
in
the
the
political
budget.
messaging, Navika? You
The
cover
political message
economy.
that Nirmala Sitharaman will be expecting to give out is increase farm subsidies. Nirmala Sitharaman reaching
job
North Block, but
opportunities.
creating farm
Those are the
subsidies, job supports, and
Stimulus for
stimulus for MSMEs. Again, this time there will be pressure expecting that stimulus to come in.
Cash payout for urban poor, relaxed FDI cap for investments, also
And
lower
also tax
capital
breaks
gains.
for salaried class.
You think that's going to happen?
My sense is I'm not putting my money on it, because the positioning of the budget of the government has always been कि middle class का दिल बहुत
This is
कुछ
important
मांगता
too,
है.
lower capital gains. Tax.
That's true. So some of those things might come in. For example, some incentive on mediclaims or medical insurance, some exemption limits increased on home loans, but definitely tax slabs, my sense is not on the table. But let's get in Mr. Santosh Mehrotra to ask him on this. Will India's growth projection at 8 to 8.5% give the finance minister enough room to give a few tax breaks? Because that's what the Aam Aadmi is looking for, especially after work from home, job losses, salary cuts. Mr. Santosh Mehrotra, do you think that's going to be on the anvil? And given that GST collections have been extremely robust between July and January this year?
I'll come to your tax question in a minute. Good morning to everyone. But what about the 8.5% growth projection? Well, just because we've had a 9.3% growth possibly in FY22 doesn't mean automatically that we will have 8.5 next year. I'll explain in a minute, because we got 9.3 this year only because we had contracted by 7.3% in the previous year, which was the worst contraction for any of the G20 countries. So it was a base effect that we got this 9.3 bonus. Now, getting to 8.5% growth in FY23 means that we will have to achieve an investment rate or investment to share of GDP of about 40%, because if the incremental capital output ratio is 5, then in order to achieve an 8% growth, you have to invest 40%. But how much did we invest this year? Well, we invested under 30%. So, you know, and this government has never managed to never managed to increase the share of investment to GDP above 30%, although it had inherited a 31.5 percentage point of GDP of.
Okay, so you're saying that, look, a lot depends on what you put in. Fair enough.
Arvind Pangaria, do you want to contest those figures and that outlook?
Because the way the argument is being made is a little weak. There is a lot of excess capacity. Also, don't forget that the base is still low.
Yes.
2 years have passed and we are back to pretty much where we were 2 years ago. So it's a 2 years investment that has happened, which has really not led to any output increase, if you want to see it this way, that today we are more or less, you know, at the pre-COVID level. But what about the investments that got done in 1920 and 2021? So there's a lot of excess capacity. And we certainly, as far as labor is concerned, we got a very significant supply of labor. And productivity rises. It's not a matter of constant output, capital output ratio. You know, this was old thinking that everything depended on capital. But productivity increases are very important. 4 major reforms were done in the last 5-6 years, all mutually reinforcing, whose impact still has not been fully realized. In fact, not even 50% of it has been realized. So there is a lot of reasons why growth actually would be robust and could be robust. There are a few more things we should do.
Navika, these reforms, there was an opportunity in the adversity, and I think that Mr. Panagria is right. A lot of reforms got pushed. Some of them were difficult reforms. I just want to very quickly, viewers, give you an overview of really where the numbers are, whether the finance minister is really in a position of strength. We also know that Mr. Chidambaram has taken a massive jibe, not just at the government, but also at the press, saying that, look, at the end of the day, it appears as if the opposition has been completely blanked out. But here's really what we're looking at. Look at the post-liberalization average, post-liberalization average of growth. And look where we are now, viewers. We're at 8.0%. So
yeah, and this was the negative growth that we saw during the pandemic, minus 7.3%.
But even the contraction was revised upwards.
Then the V-shaped recovery that's happened. And yes, you're right, the contraction began really sometime in 16, 17. And since then, it's been a downhill slope. And then after the pandemic second wave, we've really taken
pre-COVID
off.
levels. Absolutely. India's GDP
this
expected
year
to
we
be
close at, and 8 to 8.5 is the projection.
Absolutely.
For next year.
That's the takeaway, viewers. India's GDP expected to be above the 6.8% post-liberalization average and 7.4% NDA1 average. So it's going to outperform itself mostly because of what Mr. Panagria was saying, the reform. Let's take a look at the other two indicators very quickly. India to be the fastest growing economy, viewers, for the next several years. Look at where we are. India is going to be at 7.20%. China 5.68%. So that just tells you the differential.
It's way ahead of US, which is at about 3%.
Yes.
China, Brazil, Russia, UK. So India growing faster than all of these economies.
More importantly,
clearly.
China. Yes.
Absolutely. And that's a big statement to make. And if you take a look at the next set of numbers, and these numbers are extremely important because the growth in key sectors extremely important. Agriculture has been growing, maybe marginal increases, but around 4%.
This is the average for 6 years. So we are overperforming that average.
And you know, 3.9% in the economic survey that's been reported. And look at all the industrial index numbers. Manufacturing, construction, and services sector, all of them going up and growing at something between 10 to 12.5%. And those numbers are really numbers to keep in mind.
Keep an eye on the average. For 6 years, these were the numbers numbers, and look where we are today, overperforming on those numbers. So that is a very good indication, viewers, of how strong we have come out of this pandemic, and let's hope that we don't have more disruptions. Steady GST revenue in FY21, 10-month GST collection crossed 1 lakh crore mark in 2021. Average GST collection in 9 months of FY 2021-22 is 1,18,000 crores.
In fact, just in January alone, it was 1,38,000 crores.
Absolutely.
And that's been showing that there is a consumption, and that was the green light even in the economic survey, that consumption, despite the pandemic, has been growing at 7.3%, and that's a very healthy number. But obviously, there is going to be political detractors who will come out and say, let's take a look at what former Finance Minister Mr. P. Chidambaram has had to say today in a series of tweets that he's just put out. Let's take a look at former Finance Minister P. Chidambaram and what he had to say.
He takes a swipe at the government and also at the media.
Which is every morning.
There it is.
He says, on the morning of economic survey, if you read some newspapers, you will come to the conclusion that there is no opposition in India, and even if there is a feeble opposition, it has no views on the economy. Well, he has columns. As Charles Dickens said, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times, and then he goes on to say, economic survey.
Ad nauseum that the end of 2021-22, the economy would have recovered to the pre-pandemic. See, this is where the entire conversation is coming to rest. Is she in a position of strength or not? Have we recovered? Absolutely, to the point. Let's look at some other indicators and also bring in Chetan Bhagat this morning. Chetan, good morning to you. So much conversation around where we are. Forget about where we will be. Where we are right now. What's your take?
You know, it's great to be back. This is a great, budget day is very exciting to me. I know a lot of people, a lot of your viewers feel that, what is there in the budget? So many numbers and so many complicated things. But, guys, budget tells a story. And I'm a storyteller also, and I've been an investment banker also. This is a great day because it's a day full of investment banking type numbers. But it's also a day where there's a story, because where the money is being spent. Because if India was a family, where Papa spends the money tells you a lot about a family. Where are we going? It's not Santa Claus Day. It's not a day, actually, it's not supposed to be a Santa Claus Day. We panel was discussing and your surveys were showing what people want in the budget. Everybody wants a present. And it's not a day for presents. But at the same time, there will be some relief. There is inflation. So there should be slabs should be adjusted for inflation, if nothing else, automatically, right? There are certain tax calculations that are complicated. I think we need to spur the economy. There should be rebate on the previous debate that was happening, but we must have action-oriented rebates. Like if you buy a house, you get a rebate. If you spend money on a holiday, you get a rebate. Anything that helps our economy. What have you done? What are you doing to get that rebate? Maybe some of that will be there. I think we'll see. I can tell you do you want to know the end of the day? The BJP is going to say that the budget takes care of everyone. It's a very balanced budget. The CII will say it's a landmark budget, because the government is great and we just really like it. And the opposition is going to say this is a budget for rich people.
No, it's also going to say that it does nothing for nobody. So let me get in CMD of Renew Power, Mr. Sumant Sinha, joining us this morning. Good morning to you, Mr. Sinha. And what is corporate India's expectation? Infrastructure has always been high on the priority list. Those are visuals of Nirmala Sitharaman leaving North Block and all set to go and pick up her budget papers. We don't know what's in them. Actually, this time it's going to be a paperless budget. Maybe she can just mail it to us and we'll have the speech to put out. But Mr. Sumant Sinha, your expectations from this budget, and how much of it do you think will be delivered?
First of all, thank you so much for having me. Look, I think that by and large, things are going well in the economy at this point. We've had a fairly good rebound from the lows of last year. The economy is purring along quite nicely. And I think that we need to have a budget, first of all, that just continues with the current situation, that doesn't do anything remarkably wrong, for example. So I think that is point number one. I think As far as expectations around the budget are concerned, as Chetan said, you have the usual expectations around reduce some tax rate here, increase some customs duty there, increase some allocation here, and every sector will have those expectations. But I think the important thing is that we need to make sure that the economy continues to get stimulated, that fiscal deficit does not go down very suddenly, that there continues to be investments from the government. It continues to spur consumer demand, because I think that is very critical now to revive the industrial sector and the economy. So I think that is very important. And then there are certain sectors of the economy, especially, let's say, the urban poor that we've talked about quite a bit. We saw this mass migration happening last year, which was really awful. I think those kinds of things have to be prevented. And so to the extent that we can come up with any schemes that address that segment of the population, I think that would be quite useful. The other thing is there are still risks in the global economy. We are seeing the Fed increasing rates, sucking out liquidity. And so we need to make sure that we have robust demand creation within the Indian economy to make sure that we're not over-reliant on exports or international demand and so on for our growth. The last thing I would say is that we have to keep an eye out for inflation, because inflationary pressures are building up. True. And so therefore, I think anything that can be done to create more productive capacity in the economy, improve infrastructure, of course, will be very welcome.
I think the points he's made are interesting, because there is also this question about whether growth has been equitable or not. And I think GVL Narasimha Rao, that's the one big complaint. A large number of people, and I think Gurcharan Das is nodding in agreement there, and I'm going to bring him in. Equitable growth remains a problem. How do you want to address it? I have some statistics which we'll look at in just a few moments.
Yeah, and most people have said that people, instead of coming out of the below the poverty line, have gone into it. So we've increased the percentage of people
and
below the poverty line. And of course, rich have got richer, and the poorer have got poorer. The richest are 39% up growth, and poorest
53% down. Let's go quickly to the other indicators also. India said to overshoot tax target. Here it is. The bottom, richest 10% own 50%
of the wealth. The top 10% people own 57% of the country's wealth, and the bottom 50% own only 13% of the wealth.
And look at the average earnings, and these are numbers that have been put out by the World Inequality Report. Average total on top 20% earn 3,195
rupees a day.
And the bottom 50% only earn 147 rupees per day, viewers. And then, of course, there is the two-wheeler sale, which is at a 10-year low, while car sales are almost 27% up. So, there are these numbers. Rural distress. Rural income suffered more in the second wave. Let's look at the next one. Business contrast. Nearly 73% SMEs didn't make profit in 2021 as per CI. Now, just look at that graph. If you just saw that graph, it's the rural income graph line, viewers, that really has suffered the most. And of course, here it is, the two-wheeler versus car sales. And that is it. This is the problem. Look at the rural income right down there. Even the urban income has sort of seen some sort of a dip.
Even though there is some recovery. The fact is that, it's plateaued off at a number which is much lower than where it started from in 2019. And GVL Narasimha Rao, you are a member of parliament from Uttar Pradesh. चुनाव है भैया और सबसे बड़ा रुपया, तो क्या होगा? Because pressure on you to deliver some goodies for the farmers, for the lower income group, because that's where your votes are going to come from. But the fact of the matter is, inflation is rising. Can you actually spend your way to votes? That's the big question, with inflation at almost 5.6%, Mr. GVL Narasimha Rao.
Yeah, Navika, Rahul, good morning to you and all the viewers and the co-panelists. But if there is one government in independent India, if there is one government which has really done good to bridge the inequality, or to provide even the basic necessities to the poorer people of this country, to the poor people of this country, it is Narendra Modi's government in the last 7 years. Even during the pandemic, we have had more than 2 lakh crore package, and we have spent more than 1,30,000 crore in delivering free food grains to nearly 80% of India's population. So these are not small things. We have provided 2.5 crore free gas cylinders in Uttar Pradesh alone, 2.8 crore gas cylinders. And we have given direct cash payouts to 30,000 crore to 20 crore women Jan Dhan account holders. So if there is one government that has looked after the poor people of this country, that has ensured that nobody really further regresses from their position, it is this government. We spent 30,000 crore more on...
Interrupting you for a second, North Block is where the finance minister has arrived. It's also important to look at the colors, and today is Tuesday and the color is yellow.
What happens here now?
Well, she goes in there, she picks up, because the budget is in lock. Well, she's wearing a Odisha sari just like myself.
Oh,
so
wonderful.
That's the only common
You're on the
thing.
same page.
No, we are on
I hope the predictions are also on the same page.
Well, so we'll come to some breaking predictions,
Yes.
but that's Nirmala Sitharaman arriving at North Block, and then she goes into her room, picks up the budget, because budget has been under lock and key, and I know she's been over the weekend going through her budget speech. Not to make it too long like in her first budget, to sort of give it the kind of packaging as we do in terms of viewer understanding, Aam Aadmi understanding about the takeaways. So she's been doing brushing up some of those changes, and then all of that was finalized yesterday, put in a safe in North Block. She picks that up. She takes her top officials, the Revenue Secretary, Expenditure Secretary, Economic Affairs Secretary along, and the two MOSs of Finance. They come out, they do a photo op like every year, and then they go up to Rashtrapati Bhavan, because the custodian of the Consolidated Fund of India is the President of India. And when the President of India is first presented the budget, he shares a cup of tea, and that's when she briefs the President about the budget, on what are the main takeaways and how the accounting of the budget has been done. After which, of course, she goes to Parliament, and then from Parliament, there is a cabinet meeting where the cabinet colleagues are given the highlights of the budget in the cabinet meeting, and then, of course, 11 o'clock is the big budget presentation. So
cabinet meeting at 10:15 a.m. That's what you were just talking about. Let's go back to Gurcharan Das. Gurcharan Das, you were making that point, nodding in agreement about the iniquity. Let's get back to it. Yes.
Yeah, and you know, the temptation of most people now believe that it's not a V-shaped recovery, it's a K-shaped recovery, and that's understandable, frankly. And so I'm not concerned with this excess talk of inequality. The answer, we are an unequal country, and the pandemic has made it worse. But the answer is not to soak the rich, as the communists want to do, but the answer, really, the sustainable answer is jobs. That is the latent demand from this budget. And that's why it has to be a growth budget. You know, during the pandemic, you heard opposition MPs talking about, oh, Biden has given so much in America, and give 10% of GDP, somebody said. I mean, these ridiculous demands, the answer, you can either revive an economy through investment, or you can revive it through consumption.
Right.
I believe investment is the right way to go, as we did last year. Because
but Mr. Mehrotra says that we never have investment to the rate of 40%, which he says is where we need to be, and we've never really made it past 30%. That's really his grouse.
Panagria made the point that we have not got a proper measure of the investment that has been lying idle. And
let me get
so
him in then.
You will,
let me get him in. Mr. Panagria, very quickly.
That the one other good news.
Okay. Yeah, let me get him in on that point. I think it's an interesting point you raised. Mr. Panagria, yes, we don't know how much investment has been lying unused. Yes.
Right. There are many points here, Rahul. I mean, I can give you examples from 2003-4 when investment was actually 30% and we grew 8%. So one, if your productivity is high, you can grow with 30% investment very easily at 8% and sustain it actually for a long period of time. Number one. Number two, investments were done in 2021 and 21-22. And we are still GDP-wise at the level we were in 1920. And therefore, the return, there is an excess capacity as far as investment is concerned, whose return has not been yet reached. And then I mentioned, we did the reforms, and a large part of the reform payoff is still to come. And there is a lot of lag. First, there is a big lag between the, Parliament passing the laws and the implementation of those laws. It easily takes 2 to 3 years. For, India is a slow country in terms of implementation. And then there has to be a response. So a lot of the response to reforms is yet to happen. And that's productivity growth. That's not about only investment.
गांव से खदेड़े जा रहे बीजेपी के नेता